Good afternoon. Happy International Women's Day. Thank you so much for coming out. Yeah, women rock, right? Yeah. I just want to quickly say that a big thank you to SSA for allowing us to come and show this film today. I appreciate it more than you'll ever know. And thank you for everybody who showed up to be a part of this conversation. And a special thanks to my panel for giving their time to come and talk about this hugely important subject. So I don't have a lot to say. I'm a background person, so I'm gonna make this really quick. In 2013, I was working with Ruby on a research project looking at the impact of living in violent areas on Black women and girls. And one of the things that, it was a two-part research project. One of the parts was a survey, and then we took their blood for genomic studies to see how living in these areas might be impacting their immune systems. And I was a part of doing the surveys with the women, and one of the things that struck me in the questioning of them was how many of them had lived through somebody they loved being murdered. A child, a brother, cousins, nieces, nephews, even a 6-month-old baby. And one of the things that I thought from my privileged place was, oh, I'm sure you're getting some counseling, right? Somebody offered you some counseling. And they were like, no, nobody's offered me any counseling. I just kind of had to pick myself up and keep moving. And that really set with me beyond talking to them and doing the survey. Because my question was, what do you do with all this unprocessed pain and grief and trauma? And so I decided, I was actually a student here at the time. I was like, oh, when I get done with school, I'll go ahead and do a documentary, because that's what I learned at SSA, how to be a documentarian and filmmaker. So once I finished with school, graduated in 2015, I talked to Ruby, and we decided that this was something that we wanted to do. And I figured out how to get some videographers together from Northwestern Film School, and we did it. So one of the parts of kind of doing this work and working with moms and families was connecting with supportive systems that are already out there. And one of those things was Purpose Over Pain, which is a support group ran out of St. Sabina of moms who have lost children to murder in Chicago. So they welcomed me right into the fold and agreed to let me come to their homes and videotape them talking about their kids. I could say a lot about the actual interactions that I had with them, with the moms and family members of these young people. But what I can't say everything, so it's a limited amount of time. I can talk for 2 hours about it, but what I will say about it is that I went in as a researcher and somebody who wanted to know how they were functioning, and it really changed me, because this is real. These are human beings that we've lost to murder. And their families talked about who they were, what they liked, what people thought about them, how they felt when they were pregnant with these young people, and how they're doing moving forward. And what I figured out along the way is that, in large part, they're not doing well, because there are not a lot of resources available to them to help them deal with the unprocessed grief and trauma. And so I interviewed 11 family members, I think, 12. And it's been a journey. I think a lot of my own emotional state has been definitely impacted by what they said to me. And one of the things that I wanted to do with this documentary, and hope that it does, is to humanize these young people and to humanize their families. Because so many times we watch the news and it's just gang-related, drug-related. You see the mom or the family members crying at the scene and it goes away. We never know what happens past that. or who these people are. And so What's Left Behind, I hope, will be a part of solutions and resources for the families, but also a part of changing the narrative about who these people are that have been murdered on the streets of Chicago, and humanizing their families as well. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce the trailer for What's Left Behind now. Thank you.
Read an excerpt from Maya Angelou's Still I Rise. And it says, "You may write me down in history with your bitter, twisted lies. You may trod me in the very dirt, but still like dust, I'll rise. You may shoot me with your words, you may cut me with your eyes, you may kill me with your hatefulness, but still, like air, I'll rise. Out of the huts of history's shame, I rise. Up from a past that's rooted in pain, I rise. I'm a black ocean, leaping and wide, welling and swelling, I bear in the tide. Leaving behind nights of terror and fear, I rise. Into a daybreak that's wondrously clear, I rise. Bringing the gifts that my ancestors gave, I am the dream and the hope of the slave. I rise, I rise, I rise." And so I just want us to think about, from slavery to Reconstruction to the Nadir and Jim Crow to the Civil Rights Movement, the women's movement, the Black Power movement, the Black Lives Matter movement, and all the other movements of various groups, that there is this dogged strength that W.E.B. Du Bois mentioned. And I believe this dogged strength allowed the slaves to dream and hope of a moment like this here at this university, where we are not bound, we are free, our children are in danger of being sold, but yet we still have some challenges that we have to overcome. So we in this room, I argue, we have to dream and hope of not just a vague, better tomorrow for our children and grandchildren, but an end to social inequality in all its forms: racism, sexism, classism, religious bias, all of it. And so that's what I hope we're here today to think about, how we can do this. The community health program partners with organizations to educate youth about community violence and connect victims of violence with the resources they need to heal. Dr. Rogers earned his medical degree from Harvard Medical School and completed both his surgery residency and an NIH research fellowship in surgical oncology at Brigham and Women's Hospital in Boston. He completed a surgical critical care fellowship at Massachusetts General Hospital and Brigham. And additionally, he has a master's degree in public health from Vanderbilt University. And then our final panelist, Charisma, please, okay. Charisma Pryor has been a social worker for approximately 12 years. Her clinical experience includes providing social work services to children, teens and adults, seniors and families from a diverse racial and ethnic background in public, private, and healthcare settings. She provides social work services to Chatham Avalon Food Pantry and conducts seminars. Ms. Pryor received an AM in Social Service Administration from U of C, a BS in Psychology from Loyola University, and an AA in Business Administration from Harold Washington College. She is also certified in effective Black parenting and a member of the National Association of Black Workers, Social Workers. Mrs. Pryor's 29-year-old son was murdered in April 2019, and she'll also talk about that experience.
So this is kind of a hard place for me to be, but I said I'd do it, so I'm going to. In 1987, I lost my only sister to murder, and I was looking at the trailer and remembering that what I was doing that day. I was, I can sew, so I was sewing. Sunday afternoons were my day to sew and just be by myself and do what I wanted to do. And when I got the call, I went to the house where she was murdered, and they said that she'd been taken to Jackson Park Hospital. I went to Jackson Park Hospital, and they said that she'd been taken to the University of Chicago. Got to the University of Chicago, and they said, similar to some of the comments in the trailer, they said that they sent the chaplain out and said that she had died, and I wanted to see her, and she said, you shouldn't see her, she needs some work, because she'd been shot in the face and half of her head was gone. That was like Sunday. And for the next 4 days, I spent every day doing something related to my sister. The Monday, I had to go to the house where it happened, and her brain matter was on the steps. I remember that, as I was walking up the steps. And then I got all her clothes, and the guy who killed her, it was domestic violence. He had disappeared, but he eventually turned himself in. Anyway, what I want to say about that is that for 4 days, it was just doing stuff related to this murder. And I had to get her body to Memphis, that's where we're from. And I had to identify her at the morgue. And I used to say to people, when I see people being hysterical, I say, she's just showing off, she's just acting. Well, when they brought my sister down on the that thing, that little screen that they have in the morgue, my knees just buckled, and I became hysterical, and I heard the screaming, and then I heard moaning, and all of it was coming from me, and I didn't know it. We got the funeral, and then I became obsessed with getting this guy convicted. And so for 2 years, I went to court every month to just be there, to be present. And we got continuances and continuances. And finally, after 2 years, he was convicted. And he served 2 years. He served 2 years in jail, and then he was through an appeal process. His charge was dropped from murder to manslaughter, and at that time, they got a day of good time for every day served, and the minimum sentence for manslaughter was 4 years. So after 2 years, he walked out of there free. I could have gone to protest it, but I didn't have anything left in me to fight that fight anymore. So I didn't have any training in restorative justice at that time, but what I did have was a husband who was just supportive. So what my husband did for me every Saturday for the whole summer, starting in June, from June until it got cold, he woke me up, and we would drive. We lived in Chicago at the time. We would drive someplace, like to the Loop, take the train to Evanston, and then walk back to the car. So by the time I got back to the car, I was so tired and so mad at him that all I could do was just be mad. So I couldn't think about it. And that's what got me through. I was just mad at him every single Sunday. I was just mad. And then I'd get up Saturday and go right back with him. That was one thing. The other thing that I did to kind of heal myself was I went to a group. I've forgotten the name. It's a city group, but it was for victims of family members of victims of homicide. And when I went, I thought I was stuck in that place, that Sunday place, because I had. I just felt that I was stuck. I didn't think that I could ever get past that Sunday. But at the group, I was listening to people, and the people there, many of them, I was like maybe 2 months out. These people, it just happened to them, and they were in a different place from me. So I did realize that I had moved on a little bit. Had I, and as a restorative justice practitioner, and in restorative practice, you heal the harm, and sometimes there are healing circles. Had I had something like that, I think I would have I would have healed in a different way, because I'm not healed now. This is rough even talking about it. This morning, my brother who lives with me, and I were talking about it, and he said that when he saw her, I never saw her in person, I just saw her on the screen and the casket was closed. He said that the mortician was stuffing newspaper in her head, and he attacked the guy because he was saying, you know, don't do that to my sister, you know, it's just, you know, so there are all these things that we absorb, I think, when you lose someone that you don't quite know what to do with. So fast forward to, I don't know how long ago it was when I did restorative training, but I've often said to people that had I had some restorative training or a circle to participate in, I think it would have helped me to not only deal with my feelings, but to hear his family stories, because they you know, they were harmed as well, and they were very nasty to us in the courtroom, you know, because they were mad at us for pursuing this thing. And I'm going to close in a minute, but I just want to say one other thing. After the trial, I got a call from a lady who wanted to talk to me, because she said she was the mother of the guy who, the mother of the wife of the guy who killed my sister. I said, and you want to talk to me? She said, yes. She said, ma'am, could you just bear with me? And you could just hear the hurt in her. It seems that he had married this girl without telling her about this murder. And so she was married. They lived out in Oak Park someplace. And every month when he went to court, he told her he was going for an accident. And so she thought it was a car accident. She had no idea it was murder. So when I met with her mother and the wife, the wife just cried, and she said he brought some stuff with him, and would you please come and see if anything of your sister's is there? And sure enough, he had brought a couple of pieces that I knew were hers, and she gave them back to me. So, you know, that's my story.
Well, that's not an easy story to follow. I'm so sorry for your loss, and also just incredibly impressed with your ability to sit up here and talk and share that. I'm Deborah Gorman-Smith. I'm on faculty here at SSA. I'm not going to talk for 10 minutes, but I'll just say a few words about the work that we're doing and the road that led me here. I'm a clinical psychologist by training, and about 25 years ago I started doing this work, seeing kids and families, primarily those who were referred by juvenile court or from the Department of Child and Family Services. And the common thread through every case that I saw was that the children and the parents had been exposed to multiple and chronic forms of violence. And this was at a time in the early 90s when there was no discussion of prevention. I was trained to treat the consequences of exposure to violence, and we were not having a conversation at all. It's kind of shocking now, about how do we actually stop the violence to begin with. So I and a number of my colleagues and others around the country started thinking there has to be a better way to think about doing this. How do we look upstream and try to understand the causes of why people become involved in violence? How do we understand where violence is located? And most importantly, how do we use what we've learned about that to inform the development and testing of preventive interventions? My work has been focused primarily at the intersection of families and neighborhoods, and how where you live matters in terms of what you have to do as a parent as a caregiver to support healthy development in kids and how you protect kids. And I do that in communities where our research and the work that I do shows that parents and families are doing all of the things that we tell them that they're supposed to be doing, all of the things that we know. I've worked at this point with literally thousands of families. I've never met a parent who didn't want more for their child than they had for themselves, but live in communities where it's just absolutely impossible to protect their kids from being exposed to violence. We just completed a study in 30 neighborhoods in Chicago, and by the time kids were 17, all of them had been exposed to some form of serious violence. 32%, 1 out of 3, knew someone close to them, a close friend or family member who had been killed, and 18%, 1 out of 5, had actually seen someone shot or killed by the time they were 17. And just think about schools and classrooms where 1 out of 3 kids is sitting there with that kind of experience in their lives. In a similar study, we found in a sample of about 1,800 kids in Chicago public schools, in one community, 32% had reported clinical levels of depression. So again, 1 out of 3 kids were clinically depressed. So I think that people in this room understand that there's, that we have a lot of hurt and suffering kids and families out there, and we don't have the kinds of needed services or supports or who provides that kind of